Good afternoon and welcome to this episode of the Dallas Bar Association's Living Legends series. I'm Diana Brooks, Principal Attorney at Diana Brooks Law, and interviewing with me today is Brooke Ginsburg Guerrero, Senior Attorney at Husch Blackwell, where she practices fiduciary, trust, probate, and estate litigation. Brooke and I have a couple of things in common. Not only were we both members of the We Lead class of 2023, but we are both second career attorneys who were both public school teachers before we went to law school. And what grade did you teach, Brooke?
I taught third grade and middle school social studies.
And I also taught middle school English. And I think we would both agree that practicing law in a lot of ways can be a little bit easier than teaching middle schoolers. Today, we are so happy to be interviewing Shonn Brown, who is Vice President, General Counsel, and Chief Compliance Officer at Heidelberg Materials North America, which has over 9,000 employees.
Yep, that's right.
And most recently, you were at Kimberly-Clark, where you were Vice President and Deputy General Counsel, ESG and Sustainability. But before that, Deputy General Counsel, Vice President for Global Litigation, Regulatory, and Preventative Law. Before you joined Kimberly-Clark, you had an esteemed career of over 20 years as a litigator. You were a partner at Lock Lord,
Yep.
And then joined Lynn Pinker Cox Hurst as a partner. You, I think, are running out of honors to receive. Just a few. You've been named top 500 business leaders in Dallas, 𝐧𝐨𝐭𝐞 magazine. You're chair of the Hockaday School Board, chair of the Texas Women's Foundation Board, co-chair of the 50/50 Women on Boards for Dallas, which, if you're not familiar with that board, it is an education and advocacy campaign for achieving gender balance on corporate boards. You are one of the Corporate Counsel Business Journal's 50 Women to Watch for 2024. And I think most importantly, a distinguished alumna of SMU Devon School of Law.
Yes.
So welcome, Shonn, and thank you for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Shonn, for being here. I wanted to start by asking you what led you to a career in law. So it sounds like you went to undergrad at SMU and then law school there and had a career as a litigator, and now you're in-house counsel. So what made you go to law school to begin with?
Yeah, so that's actually a really funny question because I think I decided at age 8 that I wanted to be an attorney. I did not know any attorneys. I didn't really know, other than television, what attorneys did. And quite frankly, I don't know that most of my immediate family really knew what that meant. But I will say, and I was, raised by a very extended family. So my mother and father were part of my life, but I was primarily raised by my maternal grandparents and lots of aunts and uncles and cousins who sort of chipped in along the way. And once they heard me say that I wanted to be an attorney, we all sort of forged ahead at that goal, really just figuring out what's the next step. One thing I will share, though, is that, and I know everybody's story is very much not a straight line, but the first time that I was like, is this really going to happen, is when I took the LSAT and did not do well in undergrad. And so obviously I took it again and I ended up going to SMU Law School and having that opportunity. But it was not for someone who had decided this at age 8, not knowing what it meant, and then sort of done all the things to get there. It was a really concerning, what I felt, roadblock, which I ultimately was able to overcome, that hit me at about age 20, 21. So, yeah.
I mean, to start your legal career with just an immediate sort of bump in the road, something that you had to be resilient and get over. Did that initial experience with the LSAT, do you think that impacted any way your journey just through those 3 years of law school?
Absolutely. I think that it made me dogged and determined to prove the test wrong, so to speak, or to live beyond whatever the expectations or the predictors that that particular test sort of, tried to determine. Because I kind of was on a mission to prove that, I was going to be good at this, that I could, succeed in the law school environment and obviously in a legal career. But it also made me appreciate the difficulty of the work that I was going towards, right? So I think, for so many people, not that school itself is easy or a cakewalk, but law school was very challenging. And it was probably the first time that I appreciated the challenge of education, the challenge of learning a task, how I wrote. I thought I was a really good writer. They just completely stripped my thoughts on how good of a writer I thought I was. But it definitely it was a driver for me to, one, dispel maybe what was the predictor, but also it was an opportunity that I was given. And so while I earned it, right, so I earned my admission to law school, of course, but I also felt like I was given a great gift and I did not want to squander it. So it certainly propelled me to push and to drive myself.
And I think everyone will say you have proved that predictor quite wrong. So you went to Lock Lord right out of law school. So obviously you proved that test wrong in your journey through law school. Can you tell us a little bit about some of your memories from your 14 plus years at Lock Lord? Yeah,
so Lock was and is, I still say we a lot of times when I talk about, and I joined Lock Purnell Rain Harrell, and I know that they're now about to be potentially Troutman Pepper Lock, I think is the name. But it really was foundational for me. I met my husband there. I had 3 children there. I made partner. I had my first trials. I had amazing mentors, many very good friends who I'm still very good friends with to this day. And we all jokingly say all roads lead to Lock. There's still alumni events that Lock will host, and we willingly go back because it truly is, I can't say was, but is a family. It was a great opportunity. We had an amazing incoming class. I had great women who were in leadership roles like Jerry Clements and Harriet Myers, who very much shaped sort of the path that I looked at to say, hey, I want to be able to do that. I want to have that type of a reputation. I want to have those types of skills. And it was just a really great foundational space for me to build my legal career.
Had you always wanted to go into litigation? Was that your plan from the beginning?
Yes, but it's kind of another funny story, circuitously. I thought I wanted to do litigation, and I absolutely knew that I loved advocating and standing and presenting. But when I came on as a second-year clerk at Lock, so I was a summer associate and then got a formal offer, I learned and realized that law school taught me how to read cases and come up with holdings and look for analysis, but I didn't know what employee benefits lawyers did. I didn't know what real estate lawyers did. I knew that people who did M&A and deals and transactional work put together deals, and litigators, as I described it, sort of helped decipher or break them apart, but I didn't fully appreciate what they did. So it was confirmed that the courtroom was the place for me.
After quite a long stay at Lock, you then joined Michael Hurst, so it was then Gruber Hurst.
Yep.
And we're there for another good long stretch of time, over 7 years. Anything fun that you can tell us about from your time there?
Oh my gosh.
Other than working with
working with Diana, which is great. You know what? Those were, I'll count from Gruber Hurst, then Michael and I joined Lynn Pinker, Hurst and Schwegman. And that was some of the most fun times I had practicing law, trying cases. It was fast and furious. It was deep, substantive, difficult, high stakes work. I think I was pushed to think strategically, pushed to really identify business solutions, pushed to be completely creative for the client and identify what a win was. And so I think Locke was extremely foundational for me, and I got the opportunity to try cases. And I didn't mention that I also did lawyers on loan when I was at Locke, which was wonderful because that gave me 3 months in the courtroom at the DA's office where I was a DA on loan. So I think that was foundational. I think that the trial boutique, Gruber Hurst and then Lynn Pinker, very much fueled the foundation that I was provided. And I mean, we had trial theme songs for every trial that we tried. We call each other the Wonder Twins. I mean, we had so much fun practicing law together, Michael and I, and it was intense and a lot of work, but you didn't necessarily feel overwhelmed with it because it was also fun at the same time. So leaving Locke was a very difficult decision for me because, like I said, it was family, it was foundational. I felt like everyone there shaped the lawyer that I was to become. But when I really wanted to, after a pretty interesting loss to Charlotte Aldis, after an 11-week jury trial, and it was hard work and tough and just in the trenches, but I loved it. And I was like, I want more of that. And so that really got me thinking about where is the space that I can get more of that. And that certainly was joining Michael Hurst and practicing with him for 7 years.
Sounds like it was such a partnership. What was it like to work that closely with somebody and sort of be in the trenches?
Yeah, we got to know each other extremely well. I mean, he's still one of my very, very good friends to this day. And our team was very close. Michael is very focused on people, and I'm also focused on people. And so I think that was a great synergy because we were focused in that way for our clients. We were focused in that way for other lawyers that worked on our team, for all the paralegals, for the rest of the legal staff. We had amazing law student summer associates who now are partners in law firms. And so, I really felt like I got a full spectrum for not only fulfilling my own personal goals of becoming a notable trial lawyer, but also to be able to give back and to be able to pour into the next generation of notable trial lawyers. And also just demonstrate, I think, the ability to be a full person and not just to be about the practice of law and not just to be about the case you're trying or the clients that you're serving, but, our picking a trial theme, and we would have, different kind of fun inside jokes, and just the way that we were able to do it, I think made it, though it was work, it made it fun.
And then your next step was to take the big leap to be in-house at Kimberly-Clark. What was that decision-making process like, and a little bit about?
Yeah, so that was another pivotal, difficult decision for me in terms of what is the next step, right? And so when I left Locke, that time was, I really want reps in the courtroom. I really want the opportunity to stand and deliver on a very routine basis. And, large firms just don't try cases very often. And so the 14 years that I was at Locke, I was involved in about 6 trials, which is a lot for a big firm lawyer. And then in 7 years, I basically doubled that. So it definitely proved benefits. And so my decision point at the Locke to boutique was, I want to be a notable trial lawyer. My decision point at firm life to in-house life was, how do I become a trusted business advisor, going deeper with the business, truly understanding the business. And really, it was the question for me of, Shonn, what goal did you set when you came to this trial boutique? And have you gotten there? What else is left for you to do? Right. And so it wasn't that, I don't know that I would walk away from that experience. That was the question. I would not walk away from that experience thinking, I wish I had. I had tried the big cases. I had had the huge verdicts. I had gotten the defense wins. I had, done the closing statements, opening statements, major witnesses, experts in lots of different industries. And I felt like being pushed to my intellectual sort of, not best, but sort of intellectual points of of pressure in order to deliver as a trial lawyer. And ultimately, the goal was to really be a strong business advocate and person. And I felt like going in-house was going to give me that opportunity. Kimberly-Clark also, it was a wonderful location because I have 3 kids, as you mentioned. So, I did not have to move for that role. It was global in nature. So it also provided me some international experience. And it was a business and a mission that actually spoke to me in being a consumer business that provides products that help families, women, girls, children. And so all those synergies just kind of work together. So I wouldn't say I was like shopping my resume on the street, but this opportunity came to me and I really evaluated it and felt like it was the right next step.
Do you feel like in that experience you've gotten the challenge that you were looking for and been able to dive deeper into the businesses and sort of that experience that maybe you were craving?
I do. And it's very different. In fact, in the first probably 2 months of my being in-house, I was apologizing to my friends who were in-house for I thought I was a really good outside counsel and I may have been okay, but I thought about like the time your client, like the business, they're not lawyers, right? And when you're in a law firm, you're speaking to lawyers most of the time, all the time. And even your clients are generally general counsel or associate general counsel or deputy general counsel. But the benefit was that I had also spoken to juries about all these complex legal issues and facts that I needed them to focus on. And so I was able to leverage that, but really understanding what drives the business, what makes the business go. And there's the question, when you're an outside counsel, I feel like you're the extreme surgical expert. You're a surgical expert who's solving a very complex problem with a strategy that you develop to help the client get to the goal that they need. When you're in-house, you are not so surgical because there is the what can we do legally and then what should we do? And so there's business implications, there's reputational implications, there's uniformity implications. If we take this position in this matter, well, how does that impact another matter? And it really causes you to stretch your thinking. And I would not trade for the world my 20 plus years in a law firm because I think they were pivotal to me being able to be successful as a business advisor. But the best way you can show up as an in-house lawyer is to be a business partner who happens to be a lawyer, who uses your legal degree to provide whatever that advice is.
And on that note, the $1 million question, do you have career advice for litigators who may be looking to go in-house one day? Because the word on the street is that it's so much easier to go in-house if you're transactional. You prove that wrong. So what would you say to litigators who hope to go in-house one day?
Yeah, I would say I would focus very much on the business problem. And you're right, Diana, because I remember I actually just was speaking to a friend this week. She took me to dinner. She's a headhunter, and I know we were kind of talking, and she said, I know you mentioned maybe general counsel one day, but it's really hard for a litigator to become a general counsel. And so she said exactly that. And I think it's really getting depth on the business. So when you're talking to your clients, not just focusing on getting the answers to the discovery or the information that you need to answer the legal question at issue, but like, what are you going to tell your business clients? And then I think one of the things that that I said to my friends when I was apologizing that when I went in-house is I thought about the emails or the responses that I would give to my clients when I was at a firm. And as I am on the receiving end of that now, if someone is able to give me the quick, short answer and also have the business implications, that's something that I can very easily send on to my business clients. If I get the kind of legal memo with the sort of very issue, rule, analysis, conclusion, I've got to go through that, synthesize it myself, get it to the client. And so the more that you can do to understand the business, to communicate like a business person, utilizing the legal skill, I think it's helpful. And I think also some of my nonprofit work and work in the community helped me. Because when you're on a board and at a board level, you have to be strategic and you can't be in the weeds. And so it caused me to level up in my thinking and my analysis on how that impacted the organization.
When you sit here today and you think back on sort of those pivotal decisions you've had to make to get to the point where you are today, I mean, how does your thought process go? Like, are you glad you made the decisions you made? Are there some changes you would have made now looking back?
You know, I try to be a no regrets person. So not everything was perfect, right? I definitely made mistakes and stumbles along the way. I think that something that Julia Simon said to me sticks out in my head when I'm answering that question. Because when I was choosing to make one of those pivots, and I was very excited about how excited the person who was offering me the job was to have me. And they really want me. They're excited that I can do this. And it felt so great to be wanted and needed and chased after, right? And she just looked at me and said, yeah, but what do you want from this situation? How can you benefit from this? Where does this fit on whatever it is that you're trying to do next? And that sounds so simple, but I think we can get caught up in the excitement of being chosen, that we forget about what our own goals are, what our own potential expectations of ourselves are. Maybe we forget why we started this in the first place. And so every time I've had to make a decision, I have made sure, and I share this with anybody who comes to me and talks about, oh, I'm thinking about leaving, I'm thinking about making a change. Make sure you're running to something and not running from something, and that what you're running to actually is consistent with whatever the trajectory is that you have set for yourself. And so now that's the question I always ask myself. The second question is, am I still being challenged where I am? And am I going to grow more in this role? Or is there something that I need to do to give me a different seat, a little bit of uncomfortability to force that challenge to keep growing?
And you've had, as we mentioned in your introduction, so many accomplishments, so many accolades over your career. At this point in your career, what is something that you really love personally and that you're proud of?
Okay, so I have two things, because always a trial lawyer, you can't answer directly the question. So the first thing I would say actually is the Distinguished Alumni Award from the university, from SMU.
So I got that right.
Yeah, and even though, and I got the law school too, which I'm very proud of, kind of for similar reasons, but the university was a pride moment for me, because I just remember looking at schools, and I knew I was going to go to college somewhere. That was kind of an understanding. My family was like, you will go to school. But SMU is really expensive, as we all know. And I got a full tuition scholarship. But for that scholarship, I would not have gone to SMU. And as I mentioned, my grandparents raised me, and my grandfather, I'm trying to tell this story without getting teary, but my grandfather walked with me on the campus when I first was going to sort of look at the school and talk to financial aid and figure out what my package would look like. And it was tenuous as to whether or not I would go there, because we hadn't gotten whatever the financial package was yet. And he just kept saying, I don't know how we're going to do this. That's not enough. And the financial aid advisor was like, we'll figure out a way. We really want her to come here. And at the time, as a lot of people know, even though, yay, SMU, ACC, we were just coming out of the death penalty, and a lot of the funds for athletics had been diverted to diversity scholarships for students that lived in the DFW area. And that was a game changer for me, because that was the catalyst for everything that happened after the fact. And I just remember my grandfather, and there was a shop called Colwell & Son across the street. And he said, I used to stand across the street and look at this campus. I couldn't even set foot on this campus, being a Black man in the South at this time. And I was about to go to school there, have it fully paid for, and I was not going to squander the opportunity. And so I also have given back to SMU in every way that I can. And it is a huge part of my story. And so for me to be able to share that authentically, because that's not something that I probably would have talked about as soon as I graduated, And there's a lot of masking and sort of like playing the part. And it was not only a great honor to receive the award, but to have the opportunity to share that story. And my grandfather's no longer living, but it was great to honor him to be able to do that. So, and I said two things. I think the second thing I'll just say very succinctly was just from survival to thriving. A lot of things in the last 2 years of my life, losing my husband, trying to raise my 3 kids, continuing with my career. And, you know, you're never through a grief journey, but just the ability to not just put one foot in front of the other and keep going, but to truly sprint and accelerate. I'm really proud of that.
Incredible. So, mother of 3, avid runner, New York City Marathon.
Yes.
Do you have more hours in the day than the most of us? 'Cause I'm trying
I do not. And I'm actually working on not doing as much. But I'll say this, I get, the more I have to do, the more efficient I am. And so, but I also am getting much better about not using every minute of every day and not scheduling every minute of every day. Mostly because I have 3 kids and 2 of them are girls. And I want to present for all 3 of my kids, my son and my daughters. But I think that for so many of my generation, this have it all concept was like the mark. And so you just strove to do that and you just piled more on. 1, that's not mentally healthy. 2, it's not sustainable. And 3, I don't know that I want to mimic that or model that for my kids, that you need to do everything and you need to do everything well. And one of the things I've learned about in being in-house, and this is very different than a firm, because the firm is like, I'm the best lawyer at everything you need me to be and I can do it. But there's people that are really good at things that maybe aren't my strength. And the benefit and the beauty of getting a team of people who have different strengths and who play to each other's strengths, and they can be strong enough to acknowledge, hey, I'm not as strong in this particular area, but Diana is or Brooke is. Let's bring it all together. That's the way that you succeed. That's the way that you win as a business. That's the way that you continue to up the game, rather than I'll just pile it on and do it myself. So I think that I used to sleep very, very, very little. Now I just sleep very little. But when I don't run, when I don't work out, I actually don't have energy. So I actually need that. And that's kind of my therapy too.
So you shared a little bit about sort of your thoughts on maybe this work and life balance concept, but sort of, I don't know if you like that term or you don't like that term, but sort of what are your thoughts and what are you trying to teach your children or your daughters, sort of from what you've learned over your career?
Yeah, I do not like work-life balance. And the first person I heard use the term integration was Judge Tanya Parker. And I have hung on to that. I think balance is something that you will never achieve. And so you're setting yourself up to fail just by setting that as a goal. I like the word integration for 2 reasons. One, it does give you the ability to have some authenticity, because there may be days when you cannot do everything that you need to do for your job, but you're going to do the things that are the priorities for your job, because you need to be there for your family. You need to do something for yourself. You need to take a break. And so, you know, I'm not a fan of the word balance. And I think the integration piece allows you to let go of some of the guilt. I mean, and it never ends. I mean, I know when people's kids are little, they're like, oh my gosh, I should be there. My kids are now 21, 18, and 16. And I'm like, I should be there. And so it never goes away. It just looks differently. But I think the balance word has to go. What I'm trying to teach my girls is identify what's important right now, prioritize, and get that done. And the to-do list is never ending. There's always going to be something. And also make sure you put yourself on the to-do list, because if you don't do that, then you're you're going to burn out. And I actually started the year with a challenge that a good friend and I did for 30 days. We ended up doing it for like 35 days, but it was called Handle Hard Better. And it was like the hard stuff is never going to go away, and you can't ignore the hard stuff, and it's not going to become easy all of a sudden. But what you can change is your reaction to it and how you handle it. And so every morning we journaled, and we would share how we either handled hard better the day before or how we would handle hard better that day. That was such great perspective for me that set me in a completely different mindset on how I dealt with challenges.
I have learned a new term from you, which is power in your purpose.
Oh, yeah.
Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, you have to know why you are, what you stand for, what you won't stand for, and then leverage that as your calling card, your reputation. So when I think about power in your purpose, I think about when you first start practicing law and you're observing the way that folks do it, and you're kind of, I take a little bit from that and a little bit from that, because it kind of takes you a moment to figure out like who you're going to be in this career, this profession. And then when you lock in on that, you have to remember why it is that you're doing this thing. I think one of the most telling moments, I mentioned this 11-week trial with Charlotte Aldis. I never, ever talked about my children in the courtroom, in trial, a lot at work, never. She always talked about her family. I mean, it was a point of personalization for her with the jury. But what it also was is it made her a real person. And I thought, I've been kind of like shielding, I've lived this double life. And so that power and the purpose for me is, who is Shonn as a person? Hey, I got up and took a run this morning, or wow, I was up till 3:00 in the morning because I couldn't sleep because I was wrestling with this issue. Like, it's okay to own those things that make you who you are. You have to define who that is, and you have to stay true to it. And so when you articulate it too, it actually makes people kind of call you on it, because they're like, hey, didn't you say you were about X, Y, Z? But I think it's empowering internally, and it also allows you to exude power and presence that just is like, and this is me, like nobody else can be Shonn. I'm the only one that can be Shonn. And so if I'm trying to be Brooke or Diana, I'm not going to do a very good job at that, but I can do a great job at being me, even if it's not perfect, and it won't be.
How do you keep from getting overwhelmed? Obviously, you have a very demanding job, and you're a mother, and have other roles in the community and on boards.
Yeah.
So what do you do?
Oh, I'm overwhelmed right now. I think it's that prioritization. There is always something else to do. There are so many demands on time. Some of the things you choose. So, you're like, I signed up for this. I committed to it. I have to see it through. And then other things are things you can't control. I think when you've had so many things in your life happen to you that you can't control, it makes it really easy to not get overwhelmed, because you're just like, you know what? I cannot control this, and I'm just going to cede control and handle the things that I can. I have an amazing village of friends and family, we call it, that support me professionally, personally. They're very honest with me. Shonn, you're doing too much. Slow down. But they're also very willing to say, okay, you committed to do this. What can I do to help? Because they know my purpose. They know what I've said that I wanted to accomplish. And that has been very helpful. Now, the thing I've had to learn is how to ask for help, because they're very willing to do it. But if I don't say yes, if I don't accept help, and if I don't ask for help, then it's all for naught. That has been a huge, I like to just get things done myself, right? I can just do it. And that's been a huge learning lesson for me. So,
how does one learn how to ask for help, Shonn?
For me, sadly, it came in like a moment of crisis and trauma when I didn't have a choice. But it felt really good once I realized I did not have to do everything. And so I would just say, don't wait for the crisis or the trauma, and do it little by little, right? Hey, could you come pick something up for me? Or, hey, I'm supposed to speak at this. Could you do it instead? Or most recently for me, it's been my one child is still at home. I have to travel for work for the whole week. Can you stay at my house? And they have all said yes. And, you know, part of it, I think, is just the genuineness of the relationships. So you can't ask everybody, right? You have to trust, build trust, know that these people have your back and you also have their back. But once you have, and it could be 2 or 3 people and it could be a village of people, but you really do have to have trust, build trust, and then just start small. But you'll be amazed at how much easier it gets when you raise your hand and say, Uncle, I can't do it all.
What advice would you give other women who, specifically female lawyers, who are having to navigate difficult career and life decisions and sort of what's thrown at them? What advice would you have?
I'd say first and foremost, I hope they all have a personal board of directors, including peers, but then also people that are more senior than them, and then somebody that's not a lawyer. Because lawyers can get spun up in our own funnel. We either can believe our own hype or believe our own negativity or believe our own press. And it's very nice to have somebody outside of the legal profession to give you some perspective. I think peers are wonderful because oftentimes peers can have a sense of kind of commiseration where you're like, well, I was going through that too. Because sometimes you just feel like you're the only one and you think, why is this happening to me? Why does everybody else have their stuff together? They come through the door, they look like $1,000,000, they have a smile on their face. You have no idea they're also crumbling inside, but they're just doing a really good job of masking it. So I think we have to get better at being authentic with those that we can trust in our peer circles. But you absolutely need somebody who's been there before you, and it can be man or woman. Sometimes certain experiences are very unique to women, so I would not say all men, but you know, the profession, especially as you get more senior, sadly, so many women do leave. You know, there's only going to be a certain percentage of folks that have 25 and 30 and 35 years of experience that are women, and so you do need some different perspectives. But you have to kind of just gut check yourself with, and the peers can be an echo chamber, so that's why you need that more senior as well. And then I'd also say, just make sure you have something outside of the law that defines you. Don't let your whole being be wrapped up in being a lawyer. And so I don't know if she remembers saying this to me, but Liz Lane Myers, who was also a mentor and good friend, and then interestingly, I ended up mentoring her daughter. But there was, I just remember I was in her office and her kids would call her and she would be like, hang on a minute, I need to get this. And she would pick up the phone and she would say, hi, honey, is it an emergency? I'm in a meeting. And if it was, she would be like, I need to talk to you in a bit. If it wasn't, she would say, okay, I'm going to call you back. And I don't know if she said this to me or if this is something I made up. I feel like she said it, but I don't know. But it was kind of like when I leave this world, I want to be known as a great person and a great mother and an amazing human who left a legacy. And if that means that I was known as just a good lawyer, I would be fine with that. I want to be a great lawyer, but it's not in my top 5 of my priorities. And so I think that you have to keep in perspective who you are and interacting outside of legal. That's why I got involved in so much in the community, because I wanted a group of people that wasn't all lawyers. And it was so refreshing to get outside of the legal space.
Another term I've learned from you is you refer to the gift of compartmentalization. That I sounds like is something that you gleaned from your childhood.
Yeah.
And so I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what does that mean to you, and then also how does that integrate into your ability to live with authenticity?
Yeah, good question. So, and it's interesting that I now identify that compartmentalization as a gift, because I think in my childhood, I had a lot of different experiences that had some trauma associated with them. And so in order to stay on the path that I set for myself when I was 8 years old, but just to continue to look forward, I had to block out some things. And it was kind of a means of survival, I think, when I was younger. And it actually became a real benefit to me as I got heavier in my practice, because it could be like, okay, now I need to focus on this and I need to focus in. And you don't always have the ability to do that. So I appreciate that you can't be completely, you have to have peripheral vision. You can't just be focused. But I do have the ability to say what's important right now and how do I need to focus my time. And because of that, I can say, you know what, I'm going to get to that, but I'm not going to be able to do that until tomorrow or next week. If it's a priority, let me know and I can, rearrange something if it needs to be, but this is what I need to focus on right now. I think that leads to kind of an authentic way of life, because you can then be very clear about what you can do and what you can't do. And it is a really difficult thing as a lawyer, not only to ask for help, but to say the things that you can't do, to say no, to say wait, especially when you're in a firm, right? Because you're a service provider. And so your clients are like, I need you right now. Or maybe even when you're a young lawyer and the partners are, everybody wants their project on Tuesday at noon. Well, do they all really need it Tuesday at noon, or do they just want it because that's when they want it? And so I think that my ability to just sort of chunk tasks gave me that opportunity to also say, like, this is what I'm able to provide. And when I do, like, I'm all in. So you got to deliver, right? You can't kind of say you can only do this, focus on it, and then do it like 50%. Like, you got to really deliver. But yeah, that's just kind of something that I've put into practice.
How do you, as sort of a mid-career lawyer or somebody even younger or newer in their practice, how do you decide, like, no, I can't do this versus I can do it, but it's just going to take me a lot of time to learn it. Mm-hmm. So how do you sort of make that distinction? Yeah.
And there's the benefit of me being on the other side of this and saying that to someone who's younger in career, going, so yeah, Shonn, of course I'm going to walk in and say, no, I can't do this. So I think you can ask questions and say, okay, you asked me for this on Tuesday at 5:00. Is there a deadline we're trying to meet for the client? What's driving that? Because I do have some other things that I'm working on and I need to see if I need to reprioritize. Would Wednesday at noon be okay if I can't move those around, right? And so I think you have to kind of dig behind and see what's driving the need for the urgency or the right now in order to get there. And even though it's uncomfortable and you feel when you're probably younger or mid-career that you don't have the power or the ability to go question a deadline or question what you're doing, you do need to develop that skill, because you're going to have to do that for your clients. When you're managing clients, you're going to do that for your business partners when you're managing business matters, and you're going to ultimately have to continue to do that for yourself in order to stay sane. So,
as we know, there are a lot of challenges to being a woman in law. Do you think that has given you any advantages? Being a female lawyer? Actually,
yes, because I have this T-shirt that says, please underestimate me so I can prove you wrong. And I think it's never underestimate me, but it's about being underestimated, basically. And that actually, it's very similar mindset to what we talked about with the LSAT. I was just reading 2 days ago, somebody posted on social media, a female partner, has been a partner for several years, and she walked into a deposition and was presumed to be the court reporter. And this is no knock on court reporters and their profession, because we absolutely need them to get the record right. But they just assumed, because she was a woman, or perhaps because she was a woman of color, or both, that she was the court reporter. And that happened to me so many times, and it used to make me so angry, and then I would just get so excited, because I thought, man, when you go home tonight, you're going to be like, she was definitely not the court reporter. You know, it was just, it became a challenge for me, actually. And like, even speaking back to when Michael Hurst and I were trying cases together, you know, he was typically the lead lawyer, and then sometimes we were co-counsel in terms of leading the trial. And one of the best things, and it ultimately sort of like lost its stick because people started realizing that we were sharing the responsibilities. But, you know, the judges would always say, Mr. Hurst, please call your first witness, or Mr. Hurst, opening statement. And he'd be like, actually, Miss Brown is going to do it. And, you know, we made it like very theatric because the jury now is focused on like, well, why did they assume it should be him? And wait, now she's going to speak. Okay, what's she going to say? How's she going to do? So it actually is fun for me. And so to me, I was like, this is my superpower, because you assume, because of my characteristics as a woman, as a person of color, and some people said, because I look young, I don't know that I can claim that anymore, but
You absolutely can.
And I was like, yeah, let me show you. Game on.
How did you shift from, you mentioned you were angry at first.
Yeah.
When those situations would occur, somebody would make that comment. How did you switch from anger to seeing that as your superpower?
I think there's two things. One, confidence, and preparedness is the second. Because I know you both have probably been in these situations, you know, the folks who kind of come up and they want to speak to the judge and they're kind of just phoning it in, and you have every case is highlighted, is tabbed, you got the footnote, you have the excerpt from the deposition where their client went the wrong way, and they start shuffling, and you realize, I'm really good at this, actually. I'm really good at this, and I work really hard at this. So preparation can eat all day long. And so the thing that shifted my anger was when I actually started seeing results from folks that I actually thought were better than me. I actually believed exactly the negativity that they were trying to put on me. Oh, she must not be that good because she's a woman. She must not be that good. She hasn't been doing it as long as I have. She must not be able to prevail. And getting the wins, but also seeing how my preparation put me in a completely different ballpark was like the most affirming behavior, I think, that got me to see that this is your problem, not mine.
You are always a fierce advocate for women, for empowering women, empowering people of color to climb ladders and break those glass ceilings. And one of those brain children is We Lead, right? Can you talk about how did this amazing concept that so many women in the Dallas Bar have benefited from now, how did that come to be?
Yeah. This was a Michael Hurst initiated thought. So, but this was one of those fun things we talked about when we were trying cases together. So he and I constantly had conversations about the lack of women trial lawyers, women lead counsel in trials. And it's interesting because he spent a career, most of the time he's had a woman who's been kind of co-counsel with him in his teams, in his trials. And he appreciates, I think, the synergy that comes in having multiple perspectives. And so we were having, it won't surprise you, drinks one night, and he was mentioning, you know, just the lack of women. We were specifically at first already talking about women trial lawyers over 40. Then we talked about how do you make sure that pipeline is there to have those women trial lawyers. And so I know We Lead is all women lawyers, including government and education and in-house and transactional, but it started out as a conversation about women trial lawyers. And he was about to be president of the Dallas Bar Association in a couple of years. And he said, I would like for this to be one of my seminal projects, and I would love it if you would lead it. And I was like, say less, I'm there. And so we started just brainstorming what it could look like. What are the things that I felt like helped me be prepared? We talked about women and men being part of the charge. We talked about confidence. We talked about resilience. We talked about courage. We talked about branding. The Power Hour was probably my brainchild, which was when we get together, we talk about everything and we praise how great Brooke did at this, but we don't talk about ourselves. And I noticed that my male colleagues had zero problem talking about themselves in a very favorable way. And so I thought, we just have to practice this. We have to get used to saying what a great job we did for the client and why we were the reason that a positive result or a positive outcome happened. And so we drafted the curriculum. We worked in conjunction with the Texas Women's Foundation because I was about to be chair of that board. And we started a women's leadership development program at the Women's Foundation at the same time. So we actually had our first meeting together because I learned that while it's very prevalent in law, it can exist in a number of different industries. And so there was some synergies there. But I will say it's one of my things I'm really, really proud of, just to see not just the program, but I now have the benefit of seeing women who were in that first class who are equity partners in their law firms, who had no business of their own when they went through We Lead, who were very nervous about going to the partners that they worked with, they themselves being a partner, to say, I should get credit for this, who were not asking for business in the right way. And to see that trajectory is just so, so wonderful.
Thank you for spearheading that effort. Diane and I both really enjoyed the program last year, so thank you. I know you mentor lots of attorneys today. Do you still seek out mentorship? And what does that look like for you at this time in your career?
Absolutely, I do. So, one, I've never been a general counsel or a chief compliance officer. So actually today, I'm having dinner with a chief compliance officer who has success in building a program and maturing a program. And I'm very intentional about, hey, I'd like to get together for coffee. I want to talk to you about this. I'd love if you could just give me some pointers. I want to come back to you after I've been able to talk about it. I'm doing the same with several general counsel. And then I talked about the personal board of directors. I ascribe to that myself. I have a great group of friends. So when I got this new role with Heidelberg Materials, I had a number of different circles of friendship where I have a jar actually in my office that is words for Shonn. And some friends gave me that jar and everybody gave me tips. And it's just opportunities for me to pull from it if I need a little lift, or I'm just like, okay, I got to go into this meeting and I'm really nervous about it. How do I present? But everybody really did give me great tips, great accolades, and are there at a moment's notice. And so I would say now it's an extreme intentionality for individuals from a skill set perspective. And then I still have kind of my personal board of directors that every decision goes to them.
I've already mentioned that you want to leave a legacy. You still have so much more to give. What right now are you hoping that your legacy will be?
I think, I started out at Locke, as we said. I started out at 8 years old saying I wanted to be a lawyer. And I never in a million years thought I would leave my very first law firm because I was excited with the opportunity. I love the people. My ability to challenge, change, and pivot is something I'm really proud of. And I hope that it inspires women to take chances, to leap into something that you don't fully know or understand, but with a willingness and a curiosity to learn it. And so, at this point, I really, my very first choice of making a career change was I want to be known as a trial lawyer. I want to be known as a business person. I want to be known as. I love that now it's not a one-dimensional definition. You can't really put Shonn in a box and say she's this type of lawyer or that type of business professional. And I hope that that continues to evolve because that's the only way that I can continue to change and make impact myself.
Well, this has been an incredible opportunity to sit here and get your undivided attention for an hour. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shonn.
Thanks very much.